Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about the value of life. My guest today is Lorrie Blitch, and she has written the book Sapphire, A Life That Almost Wasn't. The importance of teaching a young child about the values of life. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about Lorrie. She has an impressive and diverse career in nursing and as a business owner. She is the owner of Magellan Christian Academies for the past 19 years in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Jacksonville, Florida. Her schools have won numerous awards, including Declaration of Magellan Day by the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida in 2010. Well, she was also awarded the prestigious title of Top Woman in Business in Jacksonville, Florida by Jacksonville Magazine and recognized as Arbus Magazine's Female Entrepreneur. She is a published author of children's books, achieving Book of the Month on Amazon. Her experience in nursing is impressive. That encompasses critical care, trauma, cardiovascular intensive care, toxicology, administration and management, nursing professional, as well as medical legal nursing and field hospital nursing. She is a nurse educator for the Banner Health System in Phoenix, Arizona, responsible for the education of multiple service lines. Now, she has served her country honorably as a naval officer for 20 years. She lectures internationally on nursing topics. She holds a bachelor's degree in nursing and a master's degree in nursing education and is pursuing a doctorate degree in nurse anesthesia. Now, she sits on the board of directors for the Bannon School, New Delhi, India. She lectures on the dangers of academia's indoctrination establishment and the importance of returning to traditional academic learning. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee, get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Lorrie. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's quite an honor.
I love your bio in that it tells you the strength and the power of a woman, that we can do whatever we put our minds to, and we can make things happen. So thank you so much for being, awesome woman and showing all of the little ones around that what they can do. Now, I talk about that because many times we don't think of women as naval officers. We think of the Navy and we tend to think of men. And we don't realize that nurses aren't just people who've gone to school for, a typical 4 years, but that we have master nurses and we have nurses that have their doctorate. So you're really showing the next generation how to totally and completely be awesome. Thanks for being you and coming on the show and sharing. So I want to ask you a little bit about that before we talk about your book. How did you feel when you were given the prestigious title of Top Woman in Business as well as Female Entrepreneur in Florida?
Well, actually, it was quite a surprise. I got a call one day. I was sitting in my office. I received a call one day from Jacksonville Magazine. They said, we'd like to interview you. I guess what had happened was somebody had sent information in about me, and they had nominated me, and I didn't even know about this. And then they just picked from quite a few women who had their bios sent in and information and recommendations. Then they contacted me and they just said, we'd really like to showcase you in our next magazine or publication that we have out next month. And so they interviewed me, and so I was as one of the top female business owners in Jacksonville, Florida. And then a few months later, Arbus Magazine put an article up about me as far as a female entrepreneur, and actually that one kind of hit it on the nail head. Everybody wants to look at business owners as these people who didn't sacrifice, didn't do anything. It just fell in your lap and it's successful, but they don't realize all of the sacrifices you have to make to own a business, and the business just doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, and it takes a while for a business to really get up and going where you make a good profit. So it's a challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's been a very good challenge and one that I've done really well in.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that because someone needs to hear that. Now, one of the things that I've even shared on social media are a lot of the people that are now celebrity, and they're a celebrity, and they're talking about how it's like, yeah, it took me 15 years to be an overnight success. People will say, oh, my goodness, this person just came out of nowhere. And it's like, no, they've been doing, something. They've been putting in their dues for quite a long time. It's just now the world is a little more noticing a little bit more about what they're doing. So you definitely said a nugget of wisdom there. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about your book. Now, like I said, I love that you're an entrepreneur. I love that you've been a naval officer, and now you are an author. What made you decide that now was the time to write a book?
Well, when I saw these two little kittens and how vulnerable they were when the box was opened, I was stunned that these tiny little kittens that weighed 0.2 and 0.3 ounces, they literally fit in the palm of my hand. And I was thinking to myself, how could somebody do this to a little life? And it was unseasonably cold that year in Jacksonville, Florida. It was about 36 degrees. So they would not have made it. I suspect they probably only had about an hour to live. So one evening I was sitting at home and I knew I wanted to write this book. How I went about it, I had never written a book before. I have lectured many times, but putting words that your audience reads and they understand and they can kind of get the feel what you were feeling kind of takes a whole different special way of doing that. So this quote came up by Mahatma Gandhi where he said that the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. And I thought, my goodness, that's so true. And he also said that I hold that the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to protection by man from the cruelty of humankind. And I was looking at these little kittens that night when my janitor opened it up with my school nurse, that box, and I was thinking to myself, there is really no right way to kill a life that does not want to die, and that these kittens were crying out for help because they wanted to live. And so they were incredibly vulnerable. And the other thing is we are constantly seeing where adults are cruel to animals. They tape their mouths shut. They drop them off at the Humane Society because they're tired of them after they've had them for a couple of years. The other thing is they're neglecting the animals, dog fighting, and other atrocities that happen. And then the other thing that I also see is that children are inundated today by the devaluing of life, either by adults or even by our politicians when they sign in legislation to devalue life. And then our politicians stand aghast when children do horrific things like go into a school and shoot it up, or they're cruel to animals or cruel to other children, and they lack empathy or humanity. And then they stand aghast, these politicians, and then they get in front of the American public and say, oh, it's horrible what's going on with our children, but all they have to do is turn the mirror on themselves and say, hey, you did this. And but children learn by what they see and hear, and when they see adults doing this, then they're going to follow suit. So we really can't stand in judgment of children when adults are doing the same thing. So I wanted to put this book out there because children today are so bombarded by the devaluing of life. So hopefully my book will help educate children on the humanity towards animal and to begin their path of valuing all life, because all life has significance.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that for the person especially for the little person that may be getting teased, or someone is trying to kind of poke fun at them because they do have that very gentle and caring heart, because they do want to feed the kitten, or they do want to save the puppy, or they feel some kind of way about the animals in the ocean, that it is a beautiful thing that they feel that way, and that we should encourage them to keep that tender spirit that they have, and to be able to help and care for the animals who do need our care. Because let me tell you, it is so true. When you're not in an extremely warm climate, you forget that there is an animal that is in the cold that needs your love and attention right now. So you definitely have said something there. Now, for someone who is saying, I would love to introduce this book as a part of our book club, is there a certain age group that your book would be appropriate for? Is it all ages? Do you need to be older than 12 or older than 16? Does the age matter at all?
I don't think the age matters at all. I think that everybody can learn the value of life through this book, and then get the feel of what these kittens went through on that night to connect with their inner humanity and have empathy for these kittens. But I would say that it crosses all age groups. And I've had a number of people that have reached out to me and have said, I read this book. I gave it to my sister, who's a school teacher, and now she's reading it to her students. We read it to all of our students in our school at Magellan Christian Academy. So all the children are read to it there, and that's all the way up to 12 years. So it crosses all age boundaries. It just doesn't hit young children at 2, 3, 4, 5. I believe it crosses all boundaries, because it does teach the value of life.
I am so glad that you mentioned that, because that was going to be my next question for you as well. That could you, on that day that perhaps you have a guest reader come in, would it be appropriate to read it to literally all ages of children? And you just answered that question. That is really awesome. And especially when we have those days as well, when there's an awareness day and it's about animals, what a great idea to perhaps read that and share with the classroom of little people, that we can be mindful and we can be aware of what's going on, even if it is in the animal world and not just for adults or for people as well. I've loved that. Now, when you were writing, did you find that it came very easily for you, that you were able to get your thoughts out of your head and onto the paper, or did you find that it was difficult in any way to make sure that you articulated exactly what you wanted to say at any particular moment? Like, did the emotion ever overtake you when you were trying to share the story?
Well, I wouldn't say that emotion overtook me, more so that I wanted to convey what I saw the moment that box was opened. It was a tiny little box. And when that box was open, and I kept seeing this visual, and I still can see it to this day, there's kittens, and like I stated earlier, they're 0.2 and 0.3 ounces. They literally fit into the palm of my hands. And and they were shivering so hard, and like I said, I don't believe they would have made it in another hour. They were pretty hypothermic. But when I did start to write this, I believe that the first page was the most difficult thing to overcome, because I thought to myself, there's just so much I want to put in here, but I can't put it all on one page. Obviously, I have to spread it out. Right. And so what I did was, in the middle of the night, and I have started putting a pad and pen by my bedside so that I can write down ideas when I wake up in the middle of the night. So I woke up in the middle of the night and I started jotting down ideas. And whenever I was busy doing something, I'd write down another idea. Then I started saying, okay, I've got to start from the beginning. And what I really wanted to convey is what these kittens were going through at that moment when they were rescued by my janitor in the dumpster that night. And and I wanted them to feel what I was feeling. So that was, once I got it past that first page, then it just started kind of flowing out of me. And then when I went back to read it, I started adding a few more adjectives and a few more other emotions in there that I had experienced going through with these kittens. And so after that, it just started flowing out much easier for me. And but I just definitely wanted them to feel what I was feeling at that moment, seeing these kittens for the very first time.
Of course. Wow, I can only imagine. Well, it is time for us to go to break, Lorrie, but before we do that, I want to make sure that everyone is reminded of the name of your book, where they can pick up a copy, and, of course, how can we follow you online?
Okay, my book is Sapphire, A Life That Almost Wasn't. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart has it. All the big retailers have it. And I know it was sold out of Amazon a couple of weeks ago. Some people were telling me they were trying to get it, but it was sold out. But it was on demand print anyway. But they can also follow me on my Facebook site, Sapphire, A Life That Almost Wasn't. Also, they can follow me on Goodreads, which I will have people put reviews on there. So the major big retailers you can purchase my book from.
Alrighty, listeners, you know where you can get a copy. We'll be back. Welcome back to Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. We are talking to author Lorrie Blitch today, and her book is Sapphire, A Life That Almost Wasn't. The importance of teaching young children about the value of life. And it definitely is important that we do that. Now, Lorrie, I want to ask you, with such a great topic being covered, do you have any sequels planned? Are you writing any new books, perhaps?
I am. I'm writing the sequel to Sapphire. My publisher has kind of asked me not to give the title out yet, and not
of course.
But yes, the sequel's coming out in the next couple of months, and currently I'm also trying to get it put into a screenplay for a cartoon for children using Sapphire. And what's interesting about Sapphire, she's blind, and I didn't realize she was blind until I was in the kitchen one day, and I heard this thumping against the wall and the furniture. And I came out, and she's running in circles and hitting the walls, and I'm like, what is with you? So I picked her up, and I put my fingers close to her eyes thinking she'd blink, but she never did. Of course, she didn't really have eyelids either. We had to create those for her later. But and so I took her to the vet, and the vet said, you know what, I agree with you. She's blind. So I really had to read up on a blind cat and what I needed to do. But like I said, that's in my book. It's not been her limitation whatsoever. So my sequel is centered around her blindness, and because she's a special needs cat, or anything that special needs, their life is not any less valuable. Her blindness is not a limitation whatsoever. So this also what I wanted to put out there was that just because something is not 100% perfect does not mean its life is less valuable or does not have significance, because she definitely does.
It reminds me of where I live. We have a neighbor that has adopted 2 dogs that are 3-legged dogs. And the first dog was her own, and the dog was hit and, of course, lost his leg. But then she went down and rescued another dog that the same thing had happened to that dog, and everyone kept skipping over that particular dog. And she says, absolutely not. I have one of you at home. Of course, me, I had to stop and talk to her and say, your dog looks so happy. You can't even tell. And she's telling me this story, and it's like, wow, it really and truly is special how we tend to always look for the perfect as human beings, and we skip sometimes over the more beautiful animals, simply because they don't appear initially to be perfect. But it is so true. Those animals need our love and attention. And let me tell you, I know those dogs were pleased as punch. They were just as happy as they wanted to be as a little doggy part. So having all of that love, I can understand having a kitten that happens to be blind. As long as she's getting that love, I know that she can feel that as well. That's awesome. Now, Lorrie, you also lecture around the world, and I think that is really, really awesome. Do you have any particular country that you feel needs to kind of talk about the value of life a little bit more, or others? Flip side of the coin, have you found that there's any country in particular where they're really ahead of the game when, it comes to being aware about the value of life?
Well, I don't think that there's any country that has it, the cornerstone on the value of life, given the way the current climate is going today about the devaluing of life in many countries. I believe that all countries could certainly do far better with the valuing of life. And, all we have to do is pick up the paper and listen to the news every day about every country in the world, how life is so devalued. It doesn't matter. We'll just get rid of it, and who cares? And they don't understand about the value of life. But every country could certainly use a book or books, plural, about the value of life and encouraging the value of life, and also politicians understanding what the value of life is. So I in all my lectures, I have not really found that any one country would benefit more than another. I just think they all need some lecturing on the value of life.
We all need to be reminded. Right. I can understand that. Now, if you don't mind, I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit, because you mentioned Magellan Christian Academy. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Academy, and how do you blend the value of life as a part of your curriculum, if you do?
We do. As a matter of fact, our school is a Christian-based school. We're non-denominational. We're just kind of general Christian-based, and we teach about the different topics within the Bible. We teach on the 10 Commandments. All of our children have to recite the 10 Commandments by the time they graduate from us at Magellan. But we do teach them about the value of life. For instance, they all they're all required to read my book at Magellan. They all get it all the way from the 1-year-olds all the way up to the 12-year-olds. And we incorporate this into our program. We'll have the Humane Society come out with an animal, teach them about the care, love, and nurturing of an animal, how to keep an animal safe, and to properly feed an animal. So we teach a lot of different things. So we just teach the Christian values, which encompasses the care and love of animals, and not only animals but humans as well.
Now, when you talk about Sapphire to the students, do you let them know that that special needs animals exist? Do they get that much information, or are they allowed to kind of create an image of who these little kittens are in their own minds?
Well, both. We teach them about how these little kittens were found, how somebody devalued their life so much to seal a box, not just once with a piece of tape, but multiple times with tape, and to throw their life away in a dumpster at a very cold night. And then at the end we talk to them and say, well, she's blind, or there's some animals that don't have any legs. They may have been injured, and now they've had to have their legs amputated. But we have mechanisms where the animal can get around now. And so their life, if we tell the children that their life has value, even though that they are not perfect, that their life has value, and they can lead a very happy, fulfilling life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Lorrie, I tell you, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm so excited that you are sharing this with the next generation because, like you said, they need to understand that the value of life extends not just human to human, but also to the animals that are around us, and that we can be caring and loving and gentle with them as well. Thank you so much for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Well, thank you for having me on your show.
We will be back. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Chester. You know what I like to do on my show. I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to be your best self. Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today, I want to get you fired up about music. My guest today is Brady Novotny. He is a guitar virtuoso and licensed therapist. Now, Brady is a prolific guitar virtuoso who blends rock and flamenco style of the guitar while also injecting his faith into his music, as well as his therapy duties. Now, as a therapist, I'm fired up about hearing how he does that and how he shares music with his patient or client base. Yes, music is definitely therapy. So go on, get comfy, get cozy, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Brady. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Great. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Now, I love how you are blending the two things, your love of guitar, also with being a licensed therapist, you're sharing it with your client base. Can you tell me how you got started with all of that? But I also want you to kind of give our listeners, if you will, please, a little bit more about who you are in your own words.
Sure. I started playing the guitar at the age of 11. And I've been playing my whole life. I took lessons, and I always sought out the best teachers around the city and around the town here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I lived here my whole life. But I've played in a variety of different styles of music and groups, and even done some national tours. And I've done local stuff, and I've been a worship leader at several mega churches. And probably in my mid-30s, I went back and got my master's degree in psychology, and went on and decided to do something a little different there too. And so I became a licensed therapist, and I run alongside my music, I run a small counseling practice here outside of the city of Pittsburgh.
That is so awesome. I love how you have just walked in different paths, but yet they bring you fulfillment, and you understand that is your purpose. And I just love that. Now, was there any one event in your life or any one thing that really kind of led you to record and release your latest project with Passions Collide?
Sure. There was a time when I was playing so much that I got burned out on playing music and everything, and that's why I jumped into therapy. I wanted to do something different, and I thought God was taking me in a new direction, and He was, but He never let something else die. I mean, it might have felt like to me like the music passion died, but I think it just needed a little break, and I needed to grow a little bit in a different way in life, and look at people differently, and love people differently. So while I was building my practice, and I thought, oh, this is nice, this is what I'm going to do now, He dropped in my heart, and He's like, no, I'm not done with that music thing yet. So so He rebirthed that or resurrected it pretty strong, and all these songs kind of just came came out of me and within a year, and it decided to kind of go full in and jump out into the water there, and it is tricky doing both, because the worlds collide a little bit, as people see my stuff on YouTube and they say, "Oh, you're my therapist," but so it's a little strange for them at first, but then they're like, "Oh, that's fine," But then the people who knew me before as musician, they when I jumped into therapy, they're like, "So people come see you, huh?" That's like, "Yeah."
What? I love it. And it's so funny how people, like you said, don't realize that there's two sides, to us. And you're right. It's like you're a therapist, but you're on radio. Well, wait a minute. You're on radio. You're a therapist? It's really funny. People know you how they know you. That is so true. Now, you mentioned that when you talk about your music that there's a Randy Rhoads that has influenced you. Explain how that influence happened, and is there anyone else that has helped you become the musician and artist that you are now?
Sure. When I first started taking guitar lessons and sort of fell in love with the guitar, the instrument, I started out on classical guitar, and not because of by choice. It was what was given to me. I sort of inherited it from a family member. So that was the only thing my family could afford. It was free, right? So, so that's the only thing I had. So, when I went to the teacher, they're like, "Well, you have to take classical lessons because that's what type of guitar you have." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." But I really liked the rock music, but I didn't have electric guitar. And my family couldn't afford one at the time. And so a lot of people that I listened to back then, and Randy Rhoads, he was a big guitar player in the rock community. What he did was he started out on classical. So right there, I had he was like somebody to look up to as far as a guitar player, because he played the rock, but then he also played classical music, which made me feel like, oh, I could do this, or, I didn't need to just play one or the other. So he was a big influence for that. And then I found some other guys that were doing the same thing. Rick Emmett was another guy, and he was from a popular band in the 70s, which was Triumph, which had a very positive feel to their music. And he played classical guitar as well as electric. So those guys really, influenced me a lot, just to show me that you can do more than one thing. So, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Now, you have the song Redemption's Cry. That has been a really big hit for you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that song, and what was the process like as far as creation was concerned?
Sure. That was a very special song. My wife sings on it. It's not majority of my album's instrumental, but with this song, it required vocals. And so one day I went down into my little home studio, and I was just going to play guitar and just kind of noodle around a little bit. But then something kind of started coming out while I was playing, and this melody started I just started to play. So, when that happens, I grab my iPhone and push record. And basically that day, or that within that hour or two, the song was written. And it felt like it was kind of downloaded to my brain, from, say a different place, a spiritual place. And in my prayer time, I felt, that it was going to be called Redemption's Cry. And I kind of had the whole story about it, and and I had to find a lyricist because I don't write lyrics that well. So I found somebody, and I conveyed what I wanted, and he did a great job. And it's just really about redemption as a heavenly being crying out to the world, and of all this, of where we're at and what we're all going through, and not to forget, that redemption is still available, and to really cry out to not just somebody with addictions or with anything, but for all of us. So
absolutely. And I'm so glad that you said that, because everyone has the potential to be going through something at any given moment, and it may not be as heavy as what someone else is going through, but it's still a something for them. So most definitely, we all need to be reminded that redemption is there for us. I love that. Now, another thing that I like is that you are unapologetically a Christian and you have no problems talking about it, and I love that. Now, how did you come to that particular place in your faith? Were there things that happened along the way that kind of honed your faith, or did you just find that you know that Christ is just true and that no matter what, you're standing on the Word? How did you get to that place?
Good point. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I grew up in a very traditional church setting that kind of went to church. You know, it was more an obligation, and but I always felt like I had a connection. You know, I always enjoyed prayer. I always enjoyed even some of the Christian symbolism that we have. You know, I always, stained glass windows and stuff like that were always just beautiful to me. And even as a little kid, I used to draw that. Some people would draw animals. I would draw stained glass windows, and I don't know why. So I would do that. And then of course, in my teenage years, I kind of fell away, but just a little bit. I always had a connection to God, and then I went on a search myself, and I went out and I remember I went to the mall and bought my first Bible, and I didn't even know where to start. I just went out and bought it. So, I just wanted to learn more because for it really spoke to me and it really gave me comfort. And to me, it really there was a connection, and I really had no doubt that was the way I should, believe and follow. So, but from there, I especially in the field of counseling, so many people come with so many problems in life and issues, and I'd love to say that I could, help fix people, but there's times when I walk into that office and I just say, God, I need your help. Because I have no idea what's going on inside this person, and I can take all the theories I want, but I rely on that because people's problems are complicated.
Absolutely. And it's so true that we do have to, as therapists, that if we're doing our job and we're taking our job seriously, that I know that I spend time in prayer before my day starts. I have a brief prayer before I see each client, even if it's just when I'm walking down the hall to get them. Lord, open my ears so that I can hear what I need to hear to make sure that I can help them the way that you would have me help them. So I totally and completely understand. And listeners, let me tell you, it doesn't matter which type of therapist you are. There are so many different titles to what we do, like I'm a pastoral counselor. It doesn't matter the type of therapist. We all need to make sure that we are prayed up, as they say, before we help everyone, because we have a pretty tough job to do, but we definitely want to help and make sure we're doing it properly. So thanks for reminding everybody of that. Absolutely. Now, I have about maybe one or two more questions for you, and one is, do you have any plans for anything after Redemption's Cry? Anything in the works for us?
Well, promoting the album, as much as we can. We're going to start playing this summer, playing out around the tri-state area, and kind of promoting it that way. But eventually, probably at the end of the summer, we're going to go back in and start recording some more. You just got to keep doing that, and probably some more videos as well. As people like videos, and it tells the story. So helps tell the story, I should say. So we got some videos to make, some new music to make, and definitely going out to play. So
I love it.
And still work as much as I can.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I want to make sure that everyone knows not only the name of your project, but how they can get a copy. So if you would please, can you remind everyone of that?
Sure. You can find everything on my website, which is Brady Novotny, and that's spelled BradyNovotny.com. And on there, once you go to that site, there's all the links to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and then you can. There's the download place where you can download the music, and then, or if you want a physical copy, you can purchase the physical copy. I'll sign them, whatever you want. It's pretty much so sort of a one-stop shop there. I mean, you can search me on Google and stuff like that, and I'll pop up. You'll see me pop up as a therapist and as a guitar player. So I'm just the same guy. But yeah, through my website, you can get to those links a lot quicker. So.
Got it. Well, Brady Novotny, thank you so much for sharing with us here on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Well, thank you for having me.
And listeners, thank you for joining as well. And as always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.